How's it going, everybody out there on YouTube? Thank you for tuning into my channel. This is Atomic Moon. Something I've been wanting to do. By the way, I don't know how great this video is going to turn out because it seems like the neighborhood kids decided to start playing outside the moment I decided to record this. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to project as much as I can so that my camera will pick up the audio. Anyways, if you've been keeping up with my channel, you'll see that my tutorials lately, I try to do one tutorial a week, and over the past few weeks I've been doing tutorials based around the very basics of using a synthesizer. And when I made these videos, I kind of made them with the intention, from the mindset of somebody that maybe is a guitar player that wants to learn more about synthesizers, or production or whatever, because that's my background and that's how I got into using synthesizers, was having a mindset of a guitar player coming into it. So having said that, I want to start kind of a new series where I do the opposite. I want to make some videos intended for people that maybe got into making music by having software on their computer or something like that. Maybe they don't play necessarily an instrument or guitar. Maybe they play a little piano but don't really play guitar. This will be a crash course, a very basic primer on playing guitar. And I've been wanting to make more guitar themed videos, and this is kind of just my first video to kind of get the ball rolling and be able to have a starting point that I can continue with other guitar videos. I myself, I've been playing guitar. I'm 29 years old right now. I started playing when I was around 10 years old. My dad taught me like the very basics. He's kind of who got me into playing guitar. But primarily I am self-taught. So I would like to try to impart information to anybody that might be interested in playing guitar. But like I said, these videos, it helps if you have a little bit of a somewhat of a musical background, and maybe you just haven't really gotten into guitar. So that's kind of the mindset how I'm going to start explaining all this. So without further ado, this is a guitar. It's a regular 6-string guitar. If you're purchasing a guitar for the first time, whether to get an acoustic guitar, whether to get to an electric guitar, it really kind of depends on what you're going for and what you really want to use your guitar for. If you're solely buying an acoustic guitar, you'll have certain limitations. If you buy an electric guitar, there's certain limitations. It's kind of tricky what I would recommend if you're somebody getting into guitar, what I would recommend you buy. I would say I would lean more towards getting an acoustic guitar, but that's tricky because a lot of beginning acoustic guitars can be somewhat difficult to play, and I feel like that could end up being a hindrance in a lot of cases when it comes to longevity, sticking with the instrument or whatever. I mean, there's been countless number of occasions of people wanting to get into playing guitar, and then they get just a very difficult guitar to play on when they're first starting out, and then they just quickly give it up. If you buy an electrics typically are going to be easier to play, so that might be something to factor in if you're looking to buy a guitar. Having said that, there are a lot of great options when it comes to beginner acoustic and electric guitars. This that I've got right here, I own several acoustic guitars, several electric guitars. I own a lot of guitars, but this guitar right here, I bought off of Craigslist for like $100. I mean, you don't really, and I love this guitar. I play it all the time, and you really don't have to go like super expensive if you're looking to buy a guitar. You can get a very good deal buying secondhand, buying at pawn shops, off Craigslist and things like that. So I would recommend going that route. The only kind of problem is if you know anybody that plays guitar, somebody that can kind of point you in the right direction. That's definitely something you want to look into. If you have a friend that plays guitar and you want to buy another guitar, having them play it and try it out to see if it's a good guitar or not can be a really good step in the right direction. If you don't have anyone that you know directly that plays guitar, then I would recommend just doing as much research as possible and before making a purchase. But I mean, the number one thing is don't just go out unless you're 100% sure you're going to stick with it. Don't just go out and spend like $1,000 on an acoustic guitar, because it's really not worth it. Starting out. So, having said that, this is my acoustic guitar, one of my acoustic guitars, and some of the basics I'm going to be covering today is, like I said, deciding what guitar to begin with. I'm also going to go over picks. Okay, now there's thousands of different picks out there, lots of different varieties. What I personally use is, if I can get the camera to focus, maybe Dunlop Tortex. I pretty much exclusively play Dunlop picks. This is the pick that I use for acoustics. I use different picks for electrics, but I pretty much exclusively use Dunlop, Tortex, and Jazz 3s. This particular pick, though, this is like the thickest Dunlop Tortex picks that they make. I wouldn't really recommend using the thickest pick when you're first starting out. This one is I think it's a 2 millimeter, 1.14 millimeter. I like playing with really thick picks just for single note stuff. I really can't stand flimsy picks, but if you're just starting out, I would recommend getting a thinner pick, maybe like a .73 Dunlop, or maybe even a little bit lighter than that, like the yellow ones or the orange ones. But I can't recommend Dunlop Tortex picks enough. I think they're fantastic. I've been playing them for a long time now, and probably will, for the rest of my life. So there's one tip. So I've got my guitar, my pick, and right here on my headstock, conveniently, is my Snark clip-on tuner. Yeah. I think the text might be backwards, but you see these a lot. They're like, $15-20. Some of the nicer ones are a little more expensive than that, but it's a tuner that basically clips on, and you can just turn it on and be able to tune your guitar straight from your headstock. And these work out really well. In fact, this guitar right here has a built-in tuner, but for me personally, I just, for some reason, like using the clip-on tuners even over the built-in tuners. I don't know why. It's really just a preference thing. But yeah, if you're looking to first get into guitar, you're going to want to get a guitar, a pick, and a tuner, so definitely look out to get a Snark clip-on tuner. They're real easy to use. They're cheap. So, yeah, that's the way I would go. And then the third thing right here is a Capo. Okay, a Capo. This is a Kaiser, I think, Capo, or it might be a different brand. There's a lot of different styles of Capos out there. Basically, Capos are used. You put them on different frets of the guitar and they change keys. It's an easy and fast way to change keys. We'll get into that a little bit later on what you can use a Capo for and what they're used for. I played guitar for years before I ever used a Capo. I used to really kind of like look down on using a Capo. I thought it was like kind of a cop-out. But in recent years, I've used them more and more, and they do have significant uses. I've got to apologize if there's a fly flying around. Anyway, so let's get down to brass tacks. Like I said, this is going to be a crash course in guitar. I'm not going to get super detailed in anything, but maybe, hopefully, if you watch this video, you can come away with a little bit more knowledge than what you went into it with. First and foremost, the easiest song to play on guitar, especially if you've never played it before, is Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, or at least like the very introduction to it. Getting into past the first few seconds of the song, it gets a little more technical, but probably the most basic riff that I can think of is the very beginning of Nothing Else Matters, which is just it's just your low string, your low E, and then your top 3 strings just played in succession. So, if you strum your guitar, and then you just take out the second and the third strings, you just play your bottom, and then your top 3, and then you play that in succession. There you go. So it's that's it. That's a song. If you if you came into this not knowing any songs, there's a song right there. It's funny, the story behind that riff. I think James Hetfield of Metallica said that he was like on the phone, just kind of strumming a guitar like while he was on the phone, and then just kind of did that like with his other hand occupied, and then all of a sudden was like, hey, that kind of sounds neat. So there you go. If you don't know a song, just a song. Moving on from there, like I said, I started playing guitar when I was 10 years old, and my dad had a ton of guitars lying around the house, and I decided I wanted to pick one up, and he taught me my very first chord progression, which was an E, or I think it was a G to an E. So it's my first song that I ever learned on guitar, like 19 years ago. What I want to do is go over a couple of basic open chord shapes, very basic ones that I think anybody can play, even although it might take just a little bit of practice, but these are very basic chord shapes that can be the fundamentals of really playing entire songs just off of these really basic chord shapes. So what I want to start with is going to be a G chord, okay? Or really, all of these basic shapes. I'm going to go over a G, a C, and an E. Okay, there's going to be 3 different chords, but they're all going to be very similar, and they're going to be very easy to switch between. Okay. The one thing about these particular chord shapes that I'm going to show you are, and just the way that I play them, although this is not technically the way you play a G chord, this is not technically the way you play a C chord, it's not technically the way you play an E chord, but just to keep things simple and keep things musical, all 3 of these chord shapes, you're going to be holding down your top 2 strings right here, or your bottom 2, depending on how you look at it, but this is your 6th string right here and your 5th string, but you're going to hold both of these down at the 3rd fret. Okay, so right there, and this is going to be it's going to be like that with all 3 of these chord shapes. Okay, so all 3 of these chord shapes all have your ring finger and your pinky on the 5th and 6th strings of the 3rd fret right here on the guitar. Okay, so that's going to sound like, we might be slightly out of tune. I'm not worried about it if you're not worried about it. So all 3 of these chord shapes are going to have that at the very top. Okay, and basically the only thing we're going to be moving around is going to be your index finger and your middle finger. Okay, so starting out very basic, we're going to do a G chord. Okay, so the way you do that is I'm going to take my middle finger right here, I'm going to put it on the 3rd fret on the bottom. Okay, taking my index finger, I'm going to put it on the 2nd fret on the 2nd string, 2nd fret, 2nd string, 3rd fret, bottom string. Okay, So you got this, and then this. So I'm gonna hold those down along with what I discussed earlier about your ring finger and your pinky going on the 3rd fret. So that's basically the chord shape right there, okay? And if you're just starting out, haven't played guitar before, that might be, this might be kind of a difficult chord shape. You might need to practice this a little bit. I remember the first time that I was taught this chord, this is one of the first chords that my dad taught me. I sat there and I just played that one chord like all day, probably like 8 hours, just like playing that one chord. It was crazy. So, you might need a little bit of time to kind of get adjusted to it and to, get your fingers acclimated to the very odd, playing the guitar is not a natural motion. It's not a natural thing that you're gonna just pick up, or that most people are just gonna pick up. So, take some time, get your fingers acclimated with that shape right there. So once again, on the bottom string, I've got my middle finger in on the 3rd fret. On the 2nd string, I have my index finger on the 2nd fret, and then my ring finger and pinky are on the 3rd fret on the 5th and 6th strings. And that's going to give me a G chord used all throughout music. This is a very common chord. Especially country music. This is like the foundations. The foundations. And like I said, if you just take some time and practice that chord. Just practice holding it down. The number one thing to look out for is to just make sure that all the strings are getting played and they're all making noise. You're not getting any dead notes. Like a dead note would be. You don't want that. You want. Okay. So that's going to be a G chord, okay? The next chord I'm going to teach you is a C chord. And going from a G chord to a C chord is very easy because especially with the way that we're playing these with, once again, you're going to be holding down your ring finger and your pinky on that 3rd fret. We're going to keep that. We're going to take the same shape that we're doing with the top string, or with the bottom string and the 2nd string. All we're going to do is move that up 1 string, okay? So instead of your middle finger being on the bottom string, your middle finger is going to be on the 2nd string, and then your index finger is going to be on the 3rd string on the 2nd fret. So it's the exact same thing as the G chord. We're just going to move it up 1 string, or down 1 string. Okay, and this is going to give us a C chord, okay? And if you want to get technical, the actual technical way you would play a C chord would be that, but that's not how we're keeping this basic. We're keeping this as simple as possible. So we're going to keep it just like this, and this is going to give you, I think it's like a C9. I don't think it's a C7. Don't worry about that, okay? We're not focused on that right now. We're just going to get from that G chord, moving it down to a C chord, okay? If you can get that down, you've basically got a song, you can use those 2 chords, all day and just do all sorts of different patterns just with those 2 chords. Super, super easy, okay? And, like I said, that's like foundations for country music, and not only country music, but a lot of pop songs also. Just using the same. So like I said, if you're completely unfamiliar with guitar and you're just starting out, that's exactly what I would start out with, is just working on that progression right there, just going from a C to a G. And I would just work on that and really just kind of work more like on your right hand technique. As far as strumming, going back to what I was talking about with picks earlier, and having a really thick gauge pick like what I'm using, and using a flimsier pick or a thinner pick. If you're using a thinner pick, especially if you're just starting out, a thinner pick is going to be way easier to strum with than a thicker pick. Okay, so right now I have a thinner pick, and as you can tell, it affects the tonality of it, but it makes strumming a lot easier. So yeah, there's really not a rocket science behind strumming, at least like with your basic strumming pattern. It's just kind of moving your hand back and forth. That's really all it is. But if you're using a thicker gauge pick, strumming is going to be a lot more difficult. So that's kind of the catch between a thinner pick and a thicker pick. Is a thicker pick is going to be easier to play. I don't know what's going on outside. A thicker pick is going to be easier to play more single note stuff. A thinner pick is going to be easier to strum, but if you start trying to play leads with a thinner pick, it doesn't really work out. At least it doesn't for me. That's why I don't really play them anymore. So yeah. So yeah. Man, there's something going on outside. Anyway, so G was the first chord, C, second chord. We're gonna go to the third shape out of this, which is gonna be an E. Okay, it's pretty easy. That's our C. This is our G. That's our C. The E is gonna be like this. Okay, so we're keeping these. Your third and fourth finger on the third fret on the fifth and sixth string, keeping that. We're gonna go from our C, and basically the concept of this chord is we're gonna take this note right here and just move it back one, okay? But it's gonna be awkward to finger it like that, you know. That's gonna be really awkward. So I end up putting my index finger on the second fret on the second string, and my middle finger on the second fret on the third string. Okay, so it's a pretty easy move. It's just like from there to there, from there to there. Okay, and then keeping these fingers right there. So I went over earlier. The easiest song, in my opinion, to play, or at least the easiest riff, would be the introduction to Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. The second easiest song, in my opinion, is a song called Broken Window Serenade by a band called Whiskey Myers. Okay, and all that entire song is just this C shape into a E shape. This is really an E minor. If you want to get an E minor, probably like added seventh if you want to start getting technical, but we're not worried about that. So that entire song is literally just it's an amazing song. I love that song. I've played that song countless times at open mic nights and stuff. It's super easy. One thing that I did not mention that I really should have mentioned is with this C chord, do not hit your bottom string with the C chord, okay? You want to hit it with the G chord, but you do not want to play that low E with the C. It's not the end of the world if you play it, because technically that low E is a part of the chord, but you're really wanting to just play the top 5 strings and leave this string out. When I'm playing chords like that and I want to mute a string, a lot of times we might be getting too advanced with this, but a lot of the times, I'm playing that's going to be my root of the chord. if I don't want to play the string above it, I'll kind of move my finger to where it kind of barely mutes the string. So it kind of deadens it a little bit. Like I said, with that C chord, it's not the end of the world because that's technically in the chord. So but really, just try to avoid hitting the bottom note with the C chord. So like I said, if I'm just starting out on guitar, this would be the song that I would be my first song to practice. Is just this little. Another thing to look out for, especially since we're holding our fingers on these strings right here, is especially with that song, as easy to play as it is in regards to only being 2 chords, switching back and forth, you will start getting, your fingers will start getting sore by the end of it, just especially your ring and your pinky, by holding that down the entire, for 6 minutes straight or however long the song is. Your fingers will start getting sore. But that's good, especially if you're starting out, because, the problem when you're first starting out is you're going to want to start building calluses and strengthen your hands and stuff. And, it might honestly be a little bit painful if you're first starting out on guitar, But that's normal. And the more you play, kind of, I'm not going to say painful, but the more discomfort that you're going to get on the tips of your fingers. But, it's all about building calluses, and eventually it won't hurt. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the 3 most basic chord shapes that I can think of as far as relating to one another and being able to switch out. And I think that's a great starting point for anybody that's wanting to get started. That's another Whiskey Myers song. I debated about throwing this in there because it's a completely different chord shape, but to kind of circle or finish off these 3 chords that we have, if you add this chord in there, you're set. You are pretty much set to really kind of say that, hey, I can play guitar. And that would be a D chord, and a D chord's pretty easy. It's basically, we're going to kind of switch out our fingering right here, but the way I play it is going to be my middle finger is going to be on the 2nd fret on the high E string. My index finger is going to be on the 2nd fret on the 4th string. So this is the 3rd string from the bottom. This is going to be the 4th string right here, your G string. And your ring finger is going to go on the 3rd fret right here on the 5th string. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Something to really look out for is to make sure that this finger right here is allowing clearance for this high E string to ring out all the way. Okay. And with this D chord, kind of like what I was talking about with the C chord earlier, is with this D chord, you only want to play the top 4 strings, okay? So the top 4 strings are the only ones that are going to be included in this. You don't want to play these bottom 2 strings. So that's what the D chord is going to sound like. And like I said, you really want to make sure that high E rings out and is not muted by anything else. So just go through each string and just make sure you're fingering it to where everything's ringing out. So and that's a Black Sabbath song called Fluff. I'm trying to think how that goes. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I know it's kind of like, it's different from the other 3 chords, but if you can get these 4 chords down, you, in my opinion, have a very solid foundation that you can expand upon. Or if you can just kind of get these 4 chord shapes down, you definitely are well on your way to being able to play songs, because with these 4 chords, there are thousands of songs on the radio that that basically incorporate these 4 chords. So, just... yeah, endless combinations just with those 4 chords. Okay, so yeah, especially if you're just starting out, it's going to be switching these chord forms is going to be challenging. It's going to be very difficult because, like I said, guitar is not a very natural instrument to play. So it really requires a lot of patience, a lot of practice, and the most important thing is just going to be making sure that all the strings are going to be ringing out, and that you're not getting any dead notes and stuff like this. Okay. As if those 4 chords weren't enough, going back to our handy dandy capo that I was talking about earlier, this can be used as a tool to slide around, and I'm going to give away a little bit of a secret. A lot of artists that don't necessarily know a lot of different chords and aren't really well versed in that type of stuff, or maybe they just kind of have one chord progression that they really like that they can use over different songs. What they'll do is they'll just play the exact same chord progression, but they'll use a capo to change the key of it. Okay, so let's just go to Broken Window Serenade, the easy chord progression we went over at the beginning or a little bit ago, and just that C to an E. If I put my capo on my 2nd fret, suddenly we're using different chords technically, but the fingerings are exactly the same. Okay, and it's basically you're doing the same thing, you're using the same chord shapes, but it's going to sound different because you're actually putting it up. So this is without the capo. Once again, same exact fingerings. We're just going from the C to the E. Okay. So I'm going to play the C to the E, then I'm going to put the capo on and play, once again, the C to the E, even though technically it's not the C to the E, it's a step up. But we're not going to worry about that. It's the same fingerings, but just played on different frets, okay? So, but it's going to sound different because it is different. So this is kind of a cheat tactic that people use to get away with playing some of the same progressions. But also it has more practical uses too. We'll get into that later. But if you're just starting out, this could be a very good way to be able to get the most out of just using these 4 chord shapes that I was showing you. The way to get the absolute most out of that is to have a capo that you can be able to play all across the neck. Okay, so once again, we're going from the C to the E. I'm going to put the capo on. You can hear the difference. Okay, so. So yeah, there you go. like I said, this is my crash course for guitar. I just want to make like a 30-minute video that's like an intro, something, you know, hey, I just went and bought a guitar, I just ordered one off Amazon. I mean, you probably can't go to, I don't think pawn shops are open right now, but, you know, I just got a guitar, what can I do with it? So hopefully this little 30-minute video can get you a primer and kind of get you started. Like I said, it's just it's all about putting time into it and building up your strength in your hands, your left and right hand, developing some synchronization where your hands are working together instead of against each other. But yeah, hopefully this will get you put in the right direction if this is something that you're into. I'm going to be kind of expanding on this in my next couple of videos. We'll start getting into playing scales and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for those. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you have not, and hey, I'll see you guys next time.